To stitch down Angelina, you can use a little bit of fusible if you'd like, but it will make it less transparent. So I usually will just lay it down in place. You could add just a little bit of spray based where you want to put it, and that will sort of hold it down if it's going to shimmy too much on with you. But for the most part, if you just put it down, and you could even just use a single stitch to start with to basically baste it in place where you'd like it to be. So just following the line of my earlier satin stitch where the sun is, that's going to help hold my Angelina down in place until I have the mountains over the top of it, which will then absolutely give it a little hug to the fabric. You can keep the little frayed edges and make it look like the light is radiating out from the sun, or you can go back over the top of this again using your satin stitch to encase those loose edges down into your sun, making it look a little bit more contained and finished. There's nothing wrong with having a little bit of the light blooming outward, though. You might decide you like Angelina so much that you end up adding a few pieces here and there. It's really just fun to play with, experiment. Remember, you can lay it down on your project, and if you don't like it, just take it away. To attach the rest of our applique, we will remove the paper backing from our fusible on both our water and our mountain fabric. Water will go down first, and the mountains will go down over the top. So again, using a nice hot iron. Now if you have Angelina on your sun, you don't want to hit that directly with your iron. So you're going to stick off to the side, or you can use your pressing sheet to cover over that area so that while you're pressing near the sun, you don't actually hit the Angelina with the direct heat of the iron. And then again, remove the paper backing. Place the mountains where you're happiest. So that looks pretty good. And then again, because I do have Angelina on my sun, I'm going to put my pressing sheet down as a protective surface in between that and my iron. Protects the Angelina, protects the iron, protects the ironing board. They're great things. And now we have our applique on our project, and we will stitch the edges of the applique down the same way that we did with our seams of our weaving. You can use a satin stitch, or again, because this is a batik fabric, you could do a simple straight stitch along the edges of your applique. That's completely up to you. We'll do it exactly the same manner. We've already got the stabilizer behind where this mountain is, so you should be good to go. Putting together our flower appliques, whether you're just using the fabric with a little bit of glue stick or fusible for your flowers, or if you wanted to do the thread art and have a little bit of batting behind as well. Basically the idea of building your flower is the same. You've got your fusible with the leaves and stems. You're going to remove the paper backing from these pieces and just have them off to the side and ready to build. You can follow my example from the photo of the sample, or you can create your own little composition. Deciding if you want to have that stem come down off the end, knowing that the binding is going to cover that up, so you have a little bit of wiggle room to play with. Deciding which way you'd like your flowers to live. And this is fun. It's like building a puzzle, really. Deciding how your flowers want to be. Which direction you think they want to exist and grow. That's a pretty fun little composition. When you're happy with building your flowers. If you just have the fusible on the back of the flowers and you haven't done the thread work on them, you can go ahead and press down everything. If you're doing the flowers with the extra thread work, I sometimes like to do my leaves and stems first. I'll fuse them down into place. Make sure I get this guy back where I wanted him. So with these here, I'm pretty happy with their placement. I'm actually going to hit them with a little bit of heat now to hold them down so they don't tend to wander off anymore. And same thing with this up here. So I'm just pressing down the green applique, and then I would go ahead and stitch these down because then I don't have to avoid them when my flowers are there. If you'd rather just fuse everything at once, that's perfectly fine too. If you are doing the thread art on your flowers and there isn't fusible behind, you can simply put a pin in the flower and then just do a simple outline around those flowers, and then we'll do a zigzag stitch to finish off these raw edges, just like we finished off the raw edges of our weaving. Another option would be to use a little bit of spray baste, where you could just lightly tap that flower with a little bit of spray baste and then lay it down in position. And that'll work like a post-it note basically to hold it in position so you don't have to use a pin. Doesn't take a lot. You just want it basically to hold its place so it's not going to shimmy around when you're sewing. And we have our pretty little flowers. Have fun, create, play around a little bit, see which design makes you happiest. Maybe you'll change your mind. Maybe you want to add an extra leaf. If you've got some extra green fabric, go ahead and make yourself an extra leaf, or maybe another stem and actually have more stems showing. Sky's the limit. To stitch down our flower applique, we're going to repeat a lot of what we've done on stitching down the seams of our woven fabric. Using a zigzag stitch, we're going to finish off the edges of the flowers. Even if they're just applique and not the thread art applique, you still want to have those raw edges encased in thread. Here I'm using a free motion foot instead of my walking foot, as it allows me a lot easier movement around the edges of the petals. Feel free to use whatever foot works for you, but this is a great time to practice and play using a free motion foot and your zigzag stitch.